Hello, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm really excited to have you here because tonight we are going to learn all about donuts. So tonight I'm going to be sharing one of my very own recipes for a chocolate donut. You don't want to miss out on this. And we are going to be using a special ingredient today. So these donuts are gluten-free, dairy-free, and refined sugar-free. So they're a little bit of a healthier version of the regular donut that you might find at Tim Hortons or some donut shop in your neighborhood. But they're still delicious and you can feel good about eating them too. So let's get started. All right, so I have all my ingredients here. As you can see, there are a fair amount of ingredients which does go into baking, but that's okay because it's going to be manageable. So what I have here are the Easy Read measuring cups from Pampered Chef. They're really amazing, especially for liquids. Instead of having to bend down or bring it up to here to see how much you've got, you can see directly in how much exactly you've got measured out there. So that's really handy. So these are our secret ingredient. If you can't see that, those are black beans. So that is going to make our dish extra protein rich, as well as add a nice moisture to the gluten-free dough and some structure. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to blitz our black beans to create a bit of a puree with them. I find that it's easier to get the texture finer if you blend them before you start adding the rest of the ingredients. So we're just going to do that now. All right, so we've just got a nice fine puree there. It's not even a puree, it's just a little bit thicker than normal, if you can see that. A little bit ground up more than normal is what I meant. Okay, so our next ingredients we're going to add are almond flour. So almond flour is a great option for gluten-free. It's also a low carb. It is a fat, as nuts are. So it makes it a little bit healthier. So we're going to use half a cup of this. So again, I'll just use my Easy Read and Measure cup. And we've got half a cup there. Okay. And then we're going to do half a cup of cocoa powder. So this guy is going to be easier to get out with a spoon. Just got to unhide my measurement there. So definitely, if you can, fair trade cocoa powder is the way to go. But this I did just get from my local grocery store. But chocolate is one of those things that is definitely on my heart as far as ethical reasons, and I do like to support that when I can, because I know those farmers work pretty hard for not a whole lot. Okay, so we've got our almond flour now and our cocoa. Now we're going to add some sea salt. So I find adding sea salt to any kind of chocolate dish brings out a lot of the flavor. And so we definitely don't want to miss out on it, but we're not going to put a lot. So we've got just 1/8 of a teaspoon here. So I'm using these fancy measuring spoons from Pampered Chef, which you can see they have this neat little adjustment. So I can go from 1 teaspoon all the way down to 1/4 of a teaspoon. These are super handy, especially when you're measuring a lot of spices all for one dish, like for baking. You don't want to have to keep pulling out another measuring spoon for 1/4 teaspoon and 1/2 teaspoon. With this, you just got 1 spoon, and as long as you're working with either wet or dry ingredients and not worried about cross-contaminating things, you can definitely keep on using this. So that is really handy. So let's just check my recipe here. We're going to be using 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Just get that out. We'll just give that a nice level measure so that we have that accurate. And then another special ingredient, this is instant coffee powder. So I also like using this with chocolate because you won't taste it in the end, but it really gives off a nice flavor to the chocolate. It just really complements it. And again, it just sort of brings out the richness of the chocolate flavor. It's not required. So if you don't drink caffeine, or even if you don't like coffee or don't want to buy instant coffee, you don't have to do it. But I am telling you, it does make a big difference, and you won't even be able to tell. Just make sure that you remember that when you eat those donuts in the evening if you're worried about sleeping. It's not very much, but for somebody who it could really affect, you definitely want to be aware. Okay, so now we're going to use a sweetener. So like I said, we're not doing refined sugar, but this is called Lakanto. It's a monk fruit sweetener. So it's a monk fruit blend with erythritol, which is a sugar alcohol. So basically, it's just the way your body digests sugar alcohols. It doesn't spike your blood sugar the same. So with sugar, when you eat sugar, you go up and then you crash. And then you eat sugar, you go up, you crash. And that's often a problem for people with diabetes, or just in general. You're always having these slumps after you eat a lot of sugar. But with the sugar alcohols, you don't have to worry about that. And so you maintain a much more even blood sugar level, which then you can have some treats without feeling kind of sluggish throughout the day. So that is a big bonus. All right, so now we're going to add 2 eggs. So I've already cracked these. One tip I would suggest if you don't bake a lot is to crack your eggs into a separate bowl, because especially if you're using farm eggs, you never know what's going to be in the egg. And even more ideal is to crack the eggs separately. So crack one in here, dump it in, crack the next one, dump it in, because you don't want just one bad egg to ruin your whole baking dish. That is never fun. Okay, so then we're going to add our grapeseed oil. So you can use any kind of just neutral oil. I like grapeseed oil because it has a really high cooking point and I like it for cooking with. So that's kind of my neutral oil of choice. But you could totally also use like a vegetable oil, a canola oil, something that, even avocado oil, something not olive oil, because you don't want to impart a lot of flavor with it. You just want it for the oil. Okay, and then we've got half a teaspoon of vanilla. So this vanilla, my parents actually brought back before COVID happened. They brought this back from Mexico, and it is extra strength. And let me tell you, I love vanilla, and I love the flavor of vanilla. I usually add extra, but with this stuff, this is double the strength. So I use the same amount on my normal recipe, which would be 1 teaspoon. And when I use it, it's almost like having 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And actually, Pampered Chef also has a vanilla. If you didn't know that Pampered Chef does vanilla or spices in food products and stuff, they do, and theirs is an extra strength. So definitely when you're looking for a vanilla in the store, you can find the extracts, but it's not the same. You want to go for the real vanilla. And even though it's going to cost you a little bit more, it's definitely worth it. That stuff is made with real vanilla beans and not just an extract kind of flavor, natural flavor out of it. So that is definitely your best bet. And if you want to learn more about that, I can share the link with you below, and that way you can check it out for yourself, what Pampered Chef has to offer. All right, so our last ingredient is a dairy-free milk. So I have this Milkademia. I actually use it quite often. We got it at Costco, but it's not very easy to find. So if you have the chance to get it, I definitely recommend it. It is delicious. It's got a really neutral flavor to it, but it's definitely, you can use any kind of your favorite dairy-free milk or regular milk. If you're not making dairy-free, that would also be fine. Anything like a almond milk or cashew milk, anything like that would do fine. Okay, so now that we've got all of our main ingredients in there, we're just going to pop the lid back on and we're going to blend it up. Super easy. All right, we're gonna take a look at this here, see how it's going. So that's looking really good. I'm just gonna use my Pampered Chef spatula here just to get everything down off the sides. We don't want any of that good chocolate to go to waste, so get that cocoa powder off the side. All right, and just give that a last little mix. Then we're going to be ready for the donut pan. All right, this looks good. Okay, so I'll just show you that there. We've got really just a look of a batter. So it's nothing special, just really mixed all together. And if you're worried about the texture of the black beans, you can always puree them a lot more at the beginning. And even at this stage, you can continue pureeing until it's a consistency you like. But I'm betting that you probably won't even notice them once they're in and cooked into those donuts. All right, so here we have a donut pan. So Pampered Chef has an amazing donut pan. It is actually a really great invention because you can make donuts at home and you don't have to worry like this about gluten or dairy, sugar. You can make them whatever you like, your favorite flavors. If you're like me and you live in a small town, sometimes it's nice to have the option of donuts because where I live, there's only Tim Hortons, and so you're definitely not going to get some gluten-free donuts then. So this is a great way to make it at home. Plus, you don't just have to do donuts, you could also do bagels in it. It makes like a smaller miniature bagel, but totally awesome for a quick week meal. And I'll share some recipes with you as well, so you can try that out for yourself. So what I've got here is I've just got an oil spritzer. This is from Pampered Chef. And all it is I just added whatever oil I wanted. So I've got grapeseed oil in here again. Something neutral, something high smoking point. That way it's not going to burn when it's on your pan. But all it is it's just a pump. And so no extra preservatives or anything like that, chemicals that you get in those store-bought sprays for your pans. And you know exactly what's in it, but you're able to get it into a nice mist. So all you're going to do is pump this up and down until you can reach too much pressure that you can't push it down any further. And then it should be good to go. So we're just going to lightly spray these. That way they don't stick. So that's starting to lose a bit of the pressure. I just might not have pumped it enough the first time. Just pump that up again. Finish that last one. So yeah, if it's not spraying properly, you can always just keep pumping. That's usually the problem. And then you're good to go. Okay. So now we're just going to add our batter to our pan. So you could definitely do this with a bag. So if you had something like this, this is just a Wilton bag, but Pampered Chef also makes one like this with a really big wide tip. And it's just a circle, so you can fill these guys really easily without any mess. For today, just because we're only doing 6 of them, I'm just going to use my spatula. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the blade out here. Let's get all that good batter off. Be really careful. Put that in the sink. And then we forgot one ingredient. The best part, right? I mean, it's already full of chocolate goodness, but what's a little bit more? So these, I'm using a dark chocolate baking chips, they're called, which is just a chocolate chip that's actually sweetened with stevia. So if you're not used to stevia, it might take you some time to get used to it, but I'm telling you that it's definitely worth it. It's a really good option. Like a sugar alcohol, it doesn't increase and spike your blood sugar levels, but it is sort of a healthier alternative to those refined sugars. So we're just going to add a few in here. If you were following a recipe, it would be about a 1/4 cup. And then with my spatula, I'm just going to mix those in. We don't want to mix them in with the blade anyways, because we don't want to break them up into little tiny pieces. It's good to have the full texture. All right. So Just gonna use my spatula and my spoon here. Get a nice little even layer around. All right. And if you're following along, at this point, probably at the beginning of the video, you will have wanted to preheat your recipe to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're going to be baking these for 20 minutes in there. So I'm just going to keep filling these up, and then we're going to put them in the oven and I'll show you the result. Hey, so while our donuts are in the oven, we are just going to make a quick glaze for them. So it's super simple. So what we're going to start with is here I've got 3/4 of a cup of this Swerve, which is actually a replacement icing sugar that is refined sugar free. It's sweetened with erythritol and it's just blended into a fine powder, and it actually works fairly similar in the same respect. And so we're just going to try that out today. Then I've got some water, so really simple. We're just going to add it until it's kind of a consistency that we want. So I'll just grab a spoon to stir that up. So I've got in this easy measure cup 2 tablespoons, but we're just going to start with 1, and we'll just see where we get to from there once we stir it up. Because we're also going to add vanilla. So what I'm going to make here is just a basic vanilla icing or glaze, whatever you want to call it. So we've got the 3/4 cup of the icing sugar, we've got a tablespoon of water so far, and a 1/2 teaspoon of this extra strong vanilla that we used in the donuts. And we're just going to mix that in. So it's quite thick, so I'm going to add another probably tablespoon of this water. And get that nice and thin. We don't want it to be super thin unless you do want it more like a glaze, but we're going to try for it to be a little bit more like an icing. So we're just going to put this right on the top of those donuts, and so we want it to stay on and not just fall straight off. Of course, if we put this on to the donuts right away when they come out from the oven, we're going to have some problems because of the heat. So we're going to have to let the icing cool. And then all we're going to do is we're going to dunk these in here, and then we'll have beautiful iced donuts to try. Now it's time for the big reveal. Donuts! All right, so we've made it to the last stage of our donut making. So I got a donut here fresh out of the pan. We've cooled it down a little bit so that we don't melt the icing over it. And all I did to release them was I just cut a little bit around the inside part and the outside part just to release the final bit. Especially as they cool, they'll be a lot easier to pop out, and I was able to pop this guy out with no problem. So now I'm just going to take my mini skinny scraper here, take this icing we've made, and just give her a little spread. So now, if you wanted, you could also put this, if you had a thinner icing, you could put the icing in one of these fancy trays that we've got here. These are actually really cool. They connect to each other, so there's 3 of them, and they kind of nest together. So that way, if you're breading stuff, you've got 3 dishes all next to each other where you can have all your different things. But they're also really good for things in this situation where you need a big surface space. So if you had the glaze in the bottom of this pan, you could easily dip the donut in there, and then you'd get the whole top really nicely done. Get that nice professional look. I must say that I'm just going to go for this method because I don't want to break the donut inside. They are a very delicate mix, and they look just fine for homemade donuts. So here we go. There is our donut, chocolate donut with a vanilla icing. Let's just cut open inside and see how that baby looks. Ooh, look at that. beautiful. So moist and cakey. It's a cake donut. I'll just take a bite here and see how this tastes. Mmm. So good. You definitely want to try these. Tune in next time for Cooking with Melissa.